Good morning. Today we look at Genesis 33, 34, and 35. And yesterday in chapter 32, at the end of it, Jacob had wrestled with this angel, God, all night, and had woken with a thigh that had been knocked out of joint, and he limped. Well, chapter 33 begins with Jacob looking up and seeing Esau coming in the distance. So next day, or very soon afterwards, anyway. And as much as Jacob had the night before sent everyone across the river, and he'd stayed back alone. That's what it says in verse 24. Yesterday, Jacob was left alone. Well, today he takes his children, divides them between Leah and Rachel and the two maids, and he puts the maids with their children first, and then Leah, and then Rachel, and then, verse 3, he himself went on ahead of them. So as much as he had stayed back, the night before, today he goes out ahead, and he has everybody there behind him. And it says he bowed down to the ground 7 times in front of his brother Esau as Esau came, and Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And then Esau looks around and says, well, who are all of these people? And Jacob, God has richly blessed me. These are my wives and my children and maids and all my flocks and my herds, and I'm a wealthy man. And Jacob had sent these gifts ahead, of flocks and everything, and Esau, doesn't want to accept those, and Esau says, what do you mean by all this company that I met? And he says, to find favor with my Lord, everything that had come ahead. But Esau's reply, I have enough, my brother, keep what you have for yourself. But Jacob wants to kind of make up for what he has done against Esau. And Esau is going to travel with Jacob, but Jacob says, with the children and everything, we're going to travel slower than you are going to travel, so you go ahead. And so they don't travel together, but Esau leaves some people with him. And it's Jacob and Esau's relationship as brothers has been somewhat restored. Maybe there's still a little bit of wondering there, but it's just, with Esau running to greet Jacob, I mean, it brought to my mind the Jesus parable of the prodigal son, with the father, the loving father who had been watching and waiting, running to embrace this long lost son that came back. So, and you think about that, for yourself, when you see someone you haven't seen for quite some time, or someone that you've been on the outs with, you make up, and the joy that is there, and this is what I see in Esau and Jacob coming together, joy. Chapter 34, I would like to skip this chapter, because we have Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, visiting some other women of the region. And it says, when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the region, saw her, he seized her and laid with her by force. He raped her. And then, and then his soul was drawn, and he loved the girl, and he spoke tenderly to her. And, it's just a horrible thing that happens here. And I know it happens in the world today. I mean, this, it's just a sad, sad fact of humanity, I guess. But, as devastating as it is for Dinah to be raped, her brothers, say, well, you can't marry her unless you're circumcised. We can't have her marrying someone like that. So all of you must need to be circumcised. And for a grown man to go through that circumcision is a lot different than for a baby, an infant, to do it. But on the 3rd day, after they've been circumcised, when they're just hardly able to move or do anything yet, Dinah's brothers come and just wipe out the whole town, all of the men. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. And it's one of those deals that, when we'll read, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and it's, but we like to get our own vengeance. We like to see people get what they deserve, and it's just the horror of what happens in chapter 24. And I don't even really want to talk anymore about that, but it's the all of the good that came from Esau and Jacob, reuniting as brothers, has almost been undone by this act of as well here. But yet Jacob makes his home here in this area, not so far away. And Jacob says to his sons in verse 30 of chapter 34, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stinky to the inhabitants of the land. That my numbers are few, and what if they gather and strike against me?" But the sons, should we let them treat our daughter as a whore? It was just, we did what we felt was right, and it's a horrible situation. And the Bible doesn't shade the truth of so many different things that way. The Bible doesn't make everything just look sweet and pure. And when we get into some of the other history books, as the Israelites are coming into the Promised Land, and all of the people that are living there, God destroys. There's just it makes it really hard sometimes to read and to think about what all happened. And we, I don't know if we can even justify everything we read in there, but it's life, and life is messy, and life is no more messy today than it was then. It was just, we just have a whole lot better communication, and well, I don't know for sure if it's always better. We have more communication, more avenues of it, and everything, the news and false news gets out so readily. But evil still exists in the world. That's just for sure. Chapter 35, Jacob returns. God instructs him to return to Bethel and settle there. Make an altar to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother. And then also put away your foreign gods. And so here, when Jacob and his wives had left and his family had left, it said that Rachel had taken Laban's, the false gods from there, and had, but God says, put away your false gods. And he says that to us today as well. Put away your false gods. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods. That's a big commandment for us. But yet, you put away your false gods, purify yourselves, change your clothes, and then let us come. And so they all of the people turn in their foreign gods, their statues, their rings, their idols, and all of that. And it says Jacob hid them under the oak that was near Shechem. And as they journeyed, Jacob was worried about, not being a big number of people, with all of the other people around him, that they could easily come upon him, war upon him, and destroy him. But it says, that as they journeyed, a terror from God fell on the cities around them. So again, Jacob, this cheater, he's not a perfect person in any stretch of the mind, but this person is protected by God. And then again in verse 9 of chapter 35, the name change from Jacob to Israel becomes even more evident, as God, after the wrestling match, you shall no longer be called Jacob, the supplanter, you will be Israel, God's chosen. And so it's, God speaks with with Jacob again, and he says, your name is Jacob. No longer shall you be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. And, so again, it was this blessing by God, and the 12 sons of Israel, Jacob, become the leaders of the 12 tribes of the Israelites. And the end of this chapter ends with Jacob and Esau burying their father Isaac after he had lived to be 180 years of age. So the brothers again come together again to bury their father, united that way as family.